Today is part 2 on how to get an engine to start after it's been sitting. In part 1, I went through what I would normally do to start an engine, and the reason we went into 2 parts is because we ran into a little bit more than what you usually find. We have a broken ring gear and a magnet that has to be replaced. So today I'm going to try and weld this ring gear together, reinstall this magnet, install the flywheel and the ring gear onto the engine, and see if this is finally going to start. First of all, I'm going to grind this all down, and then I'll do the welding. We also have a missing tooth here. I'm going to fill this with weld, then grind it down to match the other teeth. All right, here we have the repair. The crack was right in here. And what I used to weld this crack was a Lincoln 225, one of the tombstone welders. I don't know if it's the proper rod to use, but it's what I had. I used a 6013. Don't know if you could pick that up. A 6013 rod. I used it to weld this crack. I hit it with a weld on the inside, on the other side. Then I used the non-welder's best friend. I used this grinder to take it down. When I got close, I used a file. But I don't want to make this too small because this is a press fit. So this should work the way it looks. And then I had to fill in the tooth that was missing right here. What I did over here was just filled in these 2 slots. I used the grinder to take it down, and I used this little file, and then I used this little file to get in between. I got it as close as possible. I didn't want to play with it anymore. What I found out when I went to order this ring gear, they don't sell just the ring gear without the flywheel. And the flywheel with the ring gear, I believe, was 200 and change or 300 and change. So before I go to that route, we'll see if this works. Now, to get this ring gear back onto the flywheel, I cleaned out in here with a wire brush, and then I used a little sandpaper, and then I used some acetone on a rag, and I cleaned this up. I also cleaned these magnets. This was all caked up in here. I'm going to use JB Weld. I have that in the garage. I'm going to mix it, put the magnet on. Now, only one magnet came off. If you have several magnets that come off, you have to make sure you line them up properly as far as north and south poles on the magnets, but I don't have that problem here because it's just this one. I'm going to butter this flywheel and the magnet. I'm going to stick the magnet in, and I'm going to use one of those big office paper clips to hold it in place until it dries. According to the directions on the JB Weld, it says it cures in 6 to 8 hours, but it takes 24 hours to dry. So once I get this on, I'm going to wait to 24 hours before I go any further. Now, the trick is to get this ring back onto the flywheel. You can see that the ring is slightly smaller than the flywheel. The way to get this on is to heat this ring. If you had an acetylene torch, you could just heat this ring and it would pop right on. But I cleaned this edge over here. This was all rusted out. So what I'm going to do is to clean this up a little bit more with a wire brush. Not going to make a difference on the performance. It's just I'm going to stick it in the freezer. I'm going to put it in a plastic bag, stick it in the freezer for a couple hours, get this as hot as I could with the propane torch. Don't want to make it cherry red, but you want to make it hot. You want to get it even all the way around. If you had some kind of oven or something, you could put it in. But I'm not going to attempt to put this in my wife's oven. For those of you that are married, you know what I'm talking about. So this is going in the freezer. Once it's chilled down for a couple of hours, I'm going to heat this with the propane torch. and it should just pop right on and slide right down. So off to the freezer, and once I have it ready, I'll be back. Before we get started, just want to mention I used the propane torch to heat that gear ring. It wasn't hot enough. I put it on this electric grill, let it go up to 500 degrees. It was on there maybe 20-30 minutes. I lost track. I put it on the flywheel. It just slipped right on like it was too large. After a few minutes, I was able to touch the ring and it was tight. Everything was fine. I went in the house and heard ping. Guess what? It snapped again. I ended up welding it onto the flywheel. We'll see how that turns out. Now I have to address that magnet that fell off. I'm gonna reattach it to JB Weld. From putting this in and out of the freezer, it rusted up again. Originally I scraped it out and cleaned it up with some acetone. Today I just used a little sandpaper and rubbing alcohol. Make sure there wasn't any grease on it. I'm going to use the JB Weld. I'm going to mix it up on this piece of plastic. This is from a container I just cut out. And to mix it, this is a toothbrush. I cut the head off, shaped it up a little bit. And what I'm going to do is mix this JB Weld. I'm going to butter it on the flywheel. Then I'm going to do the same to the magnet. I'm going to place it in there. Then I'm going to hold the magnet in with this big paper clip. That's it for now, and we'll see what it looks like tomorrow. It's been a couple of days. This JB Weld had to dry, and we had some heavy-duty rainstorms, so this was put on hold. Remove this clip, and you can see the JB Weld. I believe these other magnets will fall off before this one comes off. Now, as far as the ring, I mentioned that I heard ping and it snapped again. I don't know if this is going to work. I didn't weld it all the way around, but I gave it a couple of welds here and there. I ground them down. This has to be taken down a little bit more. And thinking about it now, I should have had the JB Weld on the back of this. What I did, where the gap was, I put a big clamp on this end and this end, close to where the crack was, to pull the crack close together. And then I gave it a spot here and there where I welded it along. This is sloppy, I know. I ground it down some. This has to be flush the way it fits. This, I'm not sure if this is going to cause any kind of problem. I'm going to put it on, spin it around, see if it causes any issues. If it does, I'll be taking it down a little bit more. Like you can see this over here. Real close. Yeah, this just sticks out a little bit. I have to see if the gear nut on the starter is going to touch this over here. I don't think it will. I think I'm pretty good all around. Kind of sloppy looking, but see over here, this is real sloppy in here. But we'll see. If it works, fine. If not, I'm going to have to look for a coal engine that's not working. See if I can match the flywheel. After I did this, I did find that non-OEM ring gear for $23. I have to count the teeth on hand, see if it matches up with that ring gear. If it does, I'll clean this all up and buy that ring gear and put that on. So now I have that one extra coil to clean up. The first one was cleaned the first time I took this apart. I'm going to clean that second coil up, put this on, see if there's any interference. If not, I'll attach and gap those two coils. Then we're going to crank this up and see if she runs. I have this flywheel bolted back on, and as far as I can tell, those welds aren't touching anything below. I think they're clearing okay. I hear that little squeak. I don't believe that's any of the welds. What I'm going to do now, put the battery back on. I'm going to pour just a little gas in here because I want this to start and listen to whether the welds that are on that ring gear are touching anything down below. If it is touching down below, I have to stop it right away, but that's where I'm at right now. All right, I have some gas into the carburetor. Now for the moment of truth. Wow, that sounds a lot better than I thought it would. Next, I have to get the bolts back into the cowling, bolt this back on, get a new air filter for in here, get that shield back on here. That shield doesn't get bolted on, it just clips on, and I had it resting. I should have had it off when I started it up. But it started right up, and it's actually sounds pretty good for sitting all this long and with some bad gas in there. For now, that's a wrap. If you found this video useful or have any questions, post your comments down below. Be sure to give it a like. It helps tremendously. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe. Until next time, stay safe.